So I've spent some time mulling over my thoughts about the Crown Tundra and Pokemon Sword and Shield as a whole, as now, as far as I believe, I think the game is done receiving new content. Now, before I get into that, I'd like to preface, I never really did a actual review for Sword and Shield. And my reasoning for that was because I felt like anything I had to say had already been said. And I kind of still feel that way now. But to put into perspective, with the DLC pack, I still enjoyed Sword and Shield. I think the base game was actually pretty good. It was fun, right? And that's what counts for Pokemon to me, is that the gameplay loop is relatively similar and the rest of the game is fine. It's not the, the crazy stories. It's not the, tree textures everyone was complaining about, but, I can't make sense of everyone's criticisms, and I can't make you believe that I am giving a fair review when I try to do fair reviews. So let's put it this way. Sword and Shield initially is a average game. It's not bad. It's not fantastic. But it's serviceable. It's fun. It's got everything you'd expect from Pokemon. And that's all there is to it for Sword and Shield. It does some interesting things. It explores interesting concepts. I think Dynamax is a perfectly fine route to take. And I really don't get why everyone's so rustled about it, because it's not Mega Evolution, but in all honesty, turning the gym battles into spectacles is one of the things I have always wanted Pokemon to do. Sword and Shield kind of rubbed that childlike expectation I've had for Pokemon, so that might be why I liked it a lot, or a lot more than most people. The Isle of Armor, on the other hand, is a interesting pack. Let's say you're splitting these two packs into $15 segments. I would tell you that the Isle of Armor is okay. Is it worth the price of $15? It's okay. Not totally on board with it. Now, I think that the Isle of Armor gave us a good concept. It gave good concepts, a Pokemon that you would take on an adventure with you for this subplot that could evolve into two different forms, and I think that's a great concept that should be explored more with Pokemon, where a Pokemon can evolve into different forms and things like that. Like, they have some of that. Doing that again, but tying it to a story-based quest is a good idea. There are a lot of good things about the Isle of Armor, but overall it didn't feel like something I would usually sit down and say, yeah, I feel satisfied playing that. It was a 3-hour experience that only took me 3 hours because I challenged Mustard with a level 100 Squovit. Or with the team of level 100 Squovits, which was painful. But anyways, moving on to the Crown Tundra. The Crown Tundra is actually a pretty good expansion to Pokemon Sword and Shield. It essentially takes the idea of the wild area and gives you what we expected originally. Or what the community seemed to expect originally. It's a vast world with a lot of Pokemon spawning, a lot of interactions you can do with the environment, such as tracking down legendaries, and adding, different kind of puzzles, I guess, if you want to count the Reggie Chambers as puzzles, which, as far as Pokemon goes, are pretty standard, and just different caves and interconnected areas with no load screens. It's a good experience. The plot for the Crown Tundra is serviceable, as usual. It's not anything I'm going to say writes home, makes a good story, but it's hilarious in its own way. I got a few good laughs out of it, for my own reasons, of course. Now, the thing that Crown Tundra does is that it takes the legendaries and puts a spin on this roaming legendary concept we've had for years, I think. I think since Gold and Silver? Crystal? It's been a thing. But essentially what it does is it takes the roaming legendaries and puts each of them into the individual wild areas. So for Zapdos, you have to chase it around the original wild area and catch up to it, and you can challenge it to a battle. For Moltres, you have to chase it around the Isle of Armor. Once you do that, you will be able to catch it, or battle it, and then catch it. Articuno's a little bit more tricky, but again, you chase it around the Crown Tundra, and eventually it will give you a chance to fight it. Now, I guess it's kind of hard to give legitimate criticisms about a DLC pack for a game that most people found underwhelming, but I enjoyed it. I don't know, it's a good addition, it's a good extension of the original game. It doesn't change that much. I think if you were someone who was on the fence about buying Sword and Shield, it may not do a lot for you, since you would have to experience the main plot first, and a lot of people's complaints on the main plot are that it is a kind of meh story, but to me, Pokemon never really hit that, like, amazing story kind of thing. Even with Black and White and Black and White 2, which people will argue about have the best story, did nothing for me, really. But, you know, that's where I'm coming from. So you need to understand that there's a difference in views there. If you think Black and White was the best story game, that's fine. I just don't think Pokemon's really ever had that outside of spin-offs. And I'm not saying that that's okay, but in some ways, it's not something I ever think about. The story in Pokemon doesn't really faze me. But listen, if I had to give Crown Tundra a arbitrary review number, I'd say, mixing it in with Sword and Shield, that probably boots it up to about a 7 out of 10. I don't like really doing the review scores, it's really inconsistent, but if you want a number score, that's what it is. It really doesn't mean much. If you want my TLDR kind of criticisms, it's a good expansion. It's doing a lot for legendaries and exploring a lot of new concepts that I think are fantastic. The plot is actually funny. It's not super complex, but it's amusing, and take it for what you will. I think it's a good thing. If I had any cons, it would be that I'm not a huge fan of tracking down footprints and collectibles, so it's not really my jam. And I guess, but it gives you something to do, so that's good. I think ultimately the main criticism I could have for this is that you gotta play the Isle of Armor first, and I don't really want to experience that again, to be honest. It's not bad, but you know, you gotta, yeah. Ultimately, I just think that it's fine. You know, I can't really give like any negative points, but if you had any negative points about Sword and Shield, I believe some of those still persist. Like, the plot isn't anything like game-changing at all. You know, if you're looking for a good plot, you're gonna have to find another game. But that's all I have to say about the Crown Tundra. Thanks for watching.